Ladies and gentlemen, здравствуйте, как вы поживаете? Welcome to the lesson on Russia. Russia is a country that is culturally and historically closely connected to Europe, but nevertheless it always has followed its own path. And although in appearances and habits people may look like us, they are magnificently different, however, incredibly warm-hearted people. It's a place I really started to appreciate. In short, from Russia with love. Now here you can see the Cyrillic alphabet. It's not as difficult as it seems, but you know, to know all the words is of course. But I like the sound of it. It is a country where I work on every November. I teach several weeks in Moscow at Plekhanov University. It's one of the more classic, established institutes in the capital. I love it. I hope to do this for many, many more years. I want to draw your attention first on a little bit of geopolitical information and the EEU. So I told you the EEU, Eurasian Economic Union. This is the Natte Droom of the Kremlin. You can Google that, or better not. It is getting back to the old Soviet Union, basically. And I think, but this is purely my own idea. I have not seen it anywhere else. But I really feel that all these countries that have had, you know, these troubles recently, which is Moldav Republic, Georgia and Ukraine, I think they have been punished because they all chose for the blue flag with the golden stars, the European Union, and they moved away from the alternative, the EEU, and they got a war. Some people call it a civil war. Others say that it's just hyper control. It's just illegal according to international law, and we see that all of them have now independent republics on their former territory. Georgia has two areas, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. There is Sistria for Moldav Republic, and now there's also the east part of Ukraine, and Crimea has just been annexed completely, which historically, I'm not going to defend it, but it kind of makes sense that Crimea is Russian and not Ukrainian. Forgive me on that one, but the other parts, it's completely not. And I think it's a punishment of the Kremlin for choosing the European side. Europe is really trying to force its way on the East, and we're very expensive. And we use money and all kind of other things, but we're also playing a dirty game, to be honest. Brussels is. So the EEU is supposed to be, well, I'll explain it later, but it's an enormous block of 183 million people where you don't need a passport to travel. Finance can just move easily within that, which is a little bit more extended possibilities than we have within the European Union. They're gonna have one coin. In 4.5 years from now, they will stop the ruble. So sad. And they will take the Altin. So there's something really happening there, and you never heard about it. Isn't that weird? Isn't that where does that come from? I mean, the Netherlands are an exporting country. We need to have the backland, and Russia or the EEU is enormous. In fact, for Russia, the number one exporting economy is the Netherlands. Of course, that's Shell oil for 89%, but as far as export and incoming foreign currency, the Netherlands is number one for Russia. You would never think that, but it is. Russia sold more crude oil to the Netherlands than all of the OPEC countries together. So what, Riyadh? It's not about that. It's about Moscow. We have 4,000 Dutch companies that export to Russia, and it's not that long ago that we celebrated the Russia year. It's Russia Galandia. That means Netherlands. It's 6.5 years ago. But actually, it was celebrated at the Hermitage Museum in Amsterdam, which is, of course, dotted with a lot of rubles. They look nice with the Russian money. That's partly it. But they're doing a good job. And they always have the Russian New Year celebration there, for which I'm always a guest and sometimes a speaker for the New Year's reception, or sometimes at Rusttrade at the Museumplein, the consulate of the Russian. They have the beautiful piano recitals at the embassy in The Hague with a lot of vodka. So yeah, I'm a good friend of it, but I'm also a good friend of Georgia or Ukraine or Moldova or everybody else. Like the cocktail parties. Yeah, for this, Putin went to the Amstel, to the Hermitage in Amsterdam. And actually his daughter is married to a Dutch guy. So they've been living in Wassenaar for quite a while. But now with all the tensions, it doesn't really work. So I think they're back in Moscow, but they lived for quite a while in the Netherlands. Yeah. Then for myself, I told you, I've been trained in the spy school at the Military Intelligence Service in Ede. I didn't want to, but it was jail or go to military service. And I thought, well, in that case, let's see what they have on offer. I want the best. And for me, this was the best. So I was trained to interrogate Russian prisoners of war, which we never had, luckily. But it was very, very, very intensive. We had a crazy crash course in Russian, and it was the worst of my life. The rest of my life always has been easier compared to that madness they had there. But I came in as a party animal. I went out as a workaholic. So maybe I'm one of the few people that actually benefited from military service. So yeah, that was for me a bit of a. There you go. I actually have this crazy cap. I got it from a police guy. This is not Dutch. This is Russian. But they have these enormous ski slopes that they have on top of their head, and so I smuggled one out of the country. Also, I work sometimes with Mevrouw van Gaal. She's really nice actually, and especially. But the guy on the right, he is Maurits from the Olympic. What is it? The organization for the Olympics in the Netherlands. But they are really nice people to work with. You know, it's so nice to work with these top girls and guys, because they have a nice energy. I enjoy that. So usually what we do is when there is something related to Russia, then she's the moderator, I'm the joker, and he brings in his case studies. And yeah, it's fun to do. Here we have the invitation from Mr. Alexander Shulgin. But look at this, partner. And I really think like, well, okay, that's a very loose way of seeing. And again, as you can see, it's in the Hermitage. They know how to throw a good party, the Russians. Actually, they know how to party. I should be. I think they're some of the warm-blooded people that I know, and they really don't mind if it's Monday or Wednesday or any day. It doesn't have to be weekend for them. When they feel like it, they will have it, and they have amazing, beautiful locations in the city, and they know how to party. They are fun, and they really complain about Dutch parties. They say they're so boring, and to be honest, they're right. They know how to. I don't know if they're always the hardest workers, but the next day especially. But they know how to have fun. And it's really fun. I think also you should, when you are a practicing Muslim, it's a little bit more difficult to join. And also they have a kind of strange superiority feeling, slightly racist maybe at time. Although you have to also realize that Moscow is so multicultural. There are so many restaurants from Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, everything stan. There is one. Georgia, Lithuania. There's a little bit of everything. And every street you see really interesting places. So at the same time, people are really multicultural. And you see a lot of Asian features, and sometimes really white skin, like Boris Yeltsin, the former president. He had really kind of Asian eyes. The Mendel eyes and amandelogen. So yeah, you see mixtures. black is not that much present and not always that easy also. In the past, we would see people from Madagascar, which was a large island on the east side of Africa, and that was communist. And as a result, we saw a great many people from there studying but they have a little bit more Indian features most of the time. For the rest, not that many people. I don't think it's always that easy. Yeah, there is a strange kind of superiority feeling. You might have seen that when you're on holiday in sunny areas or Turkey, where there is floods of Russians, and for them sometimes it's cheaper there, so they just go. Yeah, forgive me to be a little bit sexist, but this is the local police force in summer. Mamma mia. Please arrest me. Please arrest me. I did something terrible. Yeah, but for me, it's like, how can you run with such high heels, It's amazing. And then you also see, the reason is maybe the demographic situation. There is way more women than men. And in the back, we see a lady who is less caring. But then again, she's also, stop here talking, Sander. Yep, I will. So what is the problem? It went up and up and up. So there were complaints about this by people to the ministry, but actually also it was defended by the chairman of the Coordination Council of the Police Officers, a man, by the way. Different. If I want to go to Russia, every year I have to take an AIDS test. The humiliation when you need to go to the doctor and said, yes, I would like to be tested on HIV. And I have this form. No, sorry, we don't do any forms. I said, I need a form. The reason I'm here is that you sign and stamp this form. No stamp, me not happy, me coming back. So no, we don't do that. I said, please call your doctor. I do that every year. And I need it now because the train is leaving in 2 hours. Do me a favor. And every year I have to do that now. Luckily, they asked me to do a guest lecture for the doctor. So now everybody knows me, and now it's like, hey, you're traveling again. So yep, this time it's the AIDS test every year, and verschrikkelijk niet. And then, if you're lucky, you are awarded a visa. Getting a visa is stress. There's a couple of countries in this world where it's really not easy. Saudi Arabia, China, and Russia. They want to know everything. It's an incredible, terrible process on your computer where you have to file all kind of stupid forms you can't read. And then you get a code back, and that code you need to file somewhere else. And then you are entered in all kind of difficult login system. They are trying to make it impossible for you to enter China or Russia. Even India is now starting with all kind of unnecessary stuff. It is a drag. It's a drag. And I don't know what to do about it. And you can't hand it over to somebody else because there's too much forms anyway. So the benefit of a visa agency doesn't help. The only thing is that they go there for you, but you need to answer questions, and then you need to go anyway for your eye scan and your fingerprints and your AIDS test, and give it a break. So if you want to travel, take time. It's not something you do last minute. It's frustrating. And the worst thing is I have the best connections. And whenever I have done a presentation, they say, Sander, if you like, Alexander, we can help you with a visa. Yeah, but that doesn't stop the AIDS test and the other bullshit that you need to go through. And nowadays they have centralized it back to Moscow. And yeah, it's very difficult. In the past, I would just get a multiple entry, but that's now every year the same hustle. It's the price you pay, but you're rewarded when you're there. Informatia. Country code number 7.ru. From here, it's 2 hours difference, 3.5 hours flight. It's not that bad. And maybe there's a lot of, prejudice against flying Russian airplanes. That's the Tupolev times. Now they have very good brand new Airbuses. I noticed there's no screens because everybody's putting their phone with the movie on it, with their VK movies on it. I noticed. So exactly the same amount of rainy days as here. And it's huge. It is huge. It is so big. It has 9 time zones. It has 144 million people. But the size of it is just size matters. It is it is 411 times bigger than the Netherlands. That's too much. 411 times, yes. However, most of it is permafrost and unlivable. The Netherlands are 41,000 square kilometers, Russia 17 million. But I found a way to get over that, and I say, yes, maybe you are 17 million square kilometers, but we are 16 million square inches. Now you, and that works usually. They start to laugh, and then I'm over my minority feeling and the crush of my ego. So remember the 16 million inches. Here we are. As you can see, this is a substantial difference. This is 411 times bigger. Potjandozie. However, and this is the second one after the 60 million square inches, that is on the Mercator map. But the world is like this. It is not flat. And it's a guy from Antwerp that created this map, Mercator. And Greenland looks enormous on it, but actually it's the same as Madagascar, which we already talked about earlier. And here we see the true size of Russia. And as you can see, in fact, Africa is the biggest. It fits most of Europe, Asia, and Latin and North America in Africa, and still you would have some extra. So Africa is huge actually, and Russia is just a tiny little country. What you didn't know about is, okay, what is Google? What is the Russia's Google? Yandex. They are huge. It's a very effective search engine for certain things. So if you can't find it in Google, I would say go to Yandex, because there you'll find anything. There's not too many laws in the country. Well, there is, of course, but that's more to oppress certain feelings, behaviors, or opinions. But as far as that concerns, Yandex gives you a lot more opportunities than Google does. And it's a lot less controlled. Yandex is also, they launched Europe's first driverless taxi. So it just drives, and it's driving there, and so they already have that. I also know that the software industry, in especially the coding specialists in Russia, are among the best in the world. We know that about the hackers, but of course that is just one element of it. You have top notch people in the world in software development and that sort of thing. If it's easy, they bring it to India. If it's impossible, they bring it to Russia, and they solve it. And that's why we have all these brilliant. How can you make a website where all academic papers, once you have the DOE, it's there, and within seconds, it's so much quicker than the databases. So how can you design that? You got to have a bunch of fantastic people, and as a result, we occasionally have some hackers in the news, but of course there's many more. So yeah, it's quite something. Here you see one of the seven towers, the seven sisters in Moscow. They're kind of landmarks within the city, and it's really practical, because at night you think, oh, where the heck am I going? And you just walk towards the building. I don't know if they're really pretty. They just wanted to have something in the communist world which was looking like the world empire. Buildings in the big things in New York, and they have quite a bunch of them. Also in the lesson about Poland, you might have seen the Culture Palace, which is one of those communist towers. They're kind of impressive though. If we look at the export, Netherlands, I told you, and import of course is China, but also Russia. That's it. Here we have the ruble. At the moment, it really went down as a result of all the isolation, the boycott. A bit classic. The Russian bear. It's one of the stereotypes, and it's referred to a lot in literature. Countries near the Russian border that all have a little fear, historically, right? Usually refer to the bear, and it's not always a very positive way. There used to be a lot of bears or wolves as well. I want to talk a little bit about geopolitics, because there are somewhat what we do need. Um, We are geographic and culturally near. However, there are a couple of things that really changed the mindset from a Russian perspective. First one was the 2008 financial crisis that really hit hard in South Korea, in China, and China started to export like mad because they thought never again do we want to have a shortage of foreign currency. So they're exporting not to export, the Chinese export to get foreign currency. They want dollars or euros or anything, yen. Also in Russia, it really hit hard. And in fact, the real estate boom after that crisis never got to the level where it was at a certain moment. Then we have the Magnitsky Act. They're also trying to execute that in the Dutch parliament. This is some lawyer, I think, that got killed. And as a result, top people in the power at the Kremlin, they froze their assets on international banks where they had the power to do so. And they are not able to fly to the US. Now, this caused a lot of negative feeling in the elite. So then we saw a sharp drop in the oil prices, which really, is also a little bit manipulated and controlled, of course, that is power. So as a result, a lot of, bad taste situation, Russia started to walk away from Europe. And also because they were feeling not all that happy, they are going for Eurasianism. And the connection to Europe, although Merkel is really in favor of it, but Merkel's not alone. Merkel is just part of a whole group called Europe, and Germany is completely dependent on the European Union. You have to choose. The Netherlands and Germany are the countries that really would like to see closer ties, and we are not in favor of the boycott because it doesn't help our economies. We really could use the hinterland, the backland behind it, and then the Eurasian Union would be perfect. So, as Tsar Nicholas I said, Russia is in, but not of Europe. Now, here we see the pushiness of the European Eastern Partnership and neighborship politics. What we have been doing is that we have been trying to promote democratic processes. We have country waarnemers. We send these white or blue cars and soldiers around everywhere, and they're looking and they're reporting back. So, but they do that actually with a blue and yellow star. So, what really surprised me when I was both in Georgia as well as in Ukraine is everywhere you see the European flag, everywhere. In the Netherlands, people don't really like it that much. In Italy, in France, I always see it next to the politicians on any level, but not as strongly as I see it in Ukraine and Georgia. And you almost would think that they are members of the EU, which they are not, and they will not be. It's too dangerous for Brussels. We fear the bear. We are afraid of the reactions from the Kremlin, and Georgia is trying so hard to become a member, but it will never happen. They, in fact, even have a minister of EU and NATO integration. I talked to the man, a wonderful guy, and we did a project together. But it's not going to happen. It's too dangerous for us, and we don't really have an army, not in that sense. For Ukraine, it went sour, and for Georgia and for Moldav. And we saw that Armenia chose to be part of the EEU, the Eurasian. So that is one of the changes. We have the ENP, the European Neighborhood Policy. You have to realize that European Union, we doubled in just a couple of years. So all of a sudden, we are at the doorstep of Russia. How would you feel if Russia started to take Belgium? What is? And it said, now you're part of the Eurasian Union. How would you feel? Would you feel comfortable with that? So we, from the Brussels perspective, say, yeah, we would like to have a buffer. But the areas that were completely Soviet Union not that long ago are now fully member of NATO with army and with there's a lot of stuff. We have a lot of economic harm that with the counter sanctions that we have given on Russia, but also they're not buying our products really harms Netherlands and Germany. Trade with Russia has really not been good. And then we have the Trump years. So what is happening? I don't know. I really hope it's going to reconcile. What we see is that the Russian economy is in a little bit in the trouble, because what we see is that there is a ruling elite and they control everything. So it's a bunch of oligarchs that have all the power and the money, but they should do something, because otherwise a new revolution in Russia is not that far away. At the moment the people start to get hungry again, it's going wrong. So there is diversion in Syria and on the other hand, one sec, please. Sorry, package. Santa Claus. We cannot have a security in Europe if we don't include Russia, and also we're wasting money. So you have to, see, we can do another Cold War, but it's just going to cost us. So we have to find other ways. I think. I'm not a politician. It's one of the few countries, developed countries, well developed in certain ways, but in the center, yes, absolutely. The population has actually shrunk. If we look at the GDP per capita, it's only a little bit higher than at the end of the Cold War. So we see some really rich people. We see a beautiful city, but it's not yet that divided. It's the old Tsars are back again. They're very dependent on the energy, and they don't really have a lot of other great products, but they're developing them now. It's not easy. And I have marked here the Russian scores. And you can look for your own country, but for instance, punctuality, Germany would be here. And is it different? Yes, it is different. But they're kind of strict. What is also the case if you are in a university in Russia, you need a kind of badge for everything, a card, and everywhere there's guards. Everywhere there's people with, uniforms. Within the university, within the subway, there's always somebody in a uniform. They're very friendly, but also in my apartment, I need to, there's a metal detector, and then I need to show a little card. They like to be in control of things. It's very controlled. Now, yeah, what else? What strikes is the very strong confrontational score for the Russians. For a lot of people, this is, for instance, in the UK, there's a lot of complaint because there's a lot of Russians in London, and they tend to complain a little bit about the direct criticism downwards that Russians can have or as clients. However, we also can see that the French or the Israeli are actually getting the gold medal. So the confrontation, the Germans are very confrontational, however, höflich, more cautious. Then if we look at complexity, it's enormous in Russia. And yeah, the corruption is sky is rocket high. It's really too much. It's very much relational, and it's very much a group. So there you go. So the confrontation is high, but the indirectness is quite indirect. And last year we had some CCBS students that went to study at the university I just showed you, and they were really complaining about something, and I had to, be a kind of diplomatic in between, because I got CC'd, and I really felt like, oh God, this is going out of hand. And didn't that guy pay any attention in my classes about indirectness? So I could solve that, but yeah, this is an issue that you will have to deal with yourself. Historically, the canals of Amsterdam are actually made by the trade with the Baltic Sea. the area close to nowadays St. Petersburg, formerly Leningrad, is what brought the real wealth. And the East, Indonesia and China, that's all later. That is not at that time yet. So it's a historical misunderstanding that the slaves created the canals. No, it's not. It is the slaves, but the Slavic tribes that were doing the first trade of things. In order to do so, the Dutch had to beat the Danes together with the Swedes, and they did. Spijt me jongens voor een paar van jullie. So that's why it was possible to go through the Skagerrak and other straits between the Scandinavian lands and islands. And as a result, there are quite some Dutch words in the Russian language that surprised me. We have the broekie, which is een broek. We have the mast, the matroos, vlakstok. That really surprised me. We organized an event at the Vrijnemaborg, and we had some people from the embassy, and I could hear them say vlakstok, vlakstok, and I think, I know what that means. And last but not least, we have the zwabber. So basically all naval, maritime words, which makes sense if you look at the previous slide. Philips has been making the real foundation of the money. Was Anton Philips going to St. Petersburg to sell 50,000 light bulbs for the Winter Palace to the Tsar. And that is actually what has been what made the first financial injection for Philips. It was the Russians. The language, I think it's a beautiful language. Everybody says, I like Italian, I like French. Sure, I do, but for me they're just languages. But the Russian is, they have all these strach of verstrach and these incredible bekkenbrekers in Dutch, where you completely, I do think it's beautiful. It's beautiful in literature. It's beautiful in these classic songs. They have very passionate classical music. You have to like classical music, but I do. And they have amazing concert halls where great maestros and composers are being played. Something about the names. You should know that the Russians have a middle name. So if you really understand the culture, you could use that middle name and then add vich for men and na for women. So Sergeyevich, and that's how you could say it. So it is the old Dutch way. If you look at the name Rembrandt Harmenszoon van Rijn, Harmenszoon is the same as Sergeyevich, or Iceland, Norway, we still see the father's name. The second thing you should know about names is that if you are called Gorbachev, then your wife will be called Gorbachova at the end. And most Slavic languages do that, including Slovak Republic, Czech Republic, or Czechia, we can say nowadays, Poland, etc. More language. No, not. What I would like, let me see if it works. Yeah. We have Jeroen Ketting, a friend of mine, and he is a consultant. He has an office close to Gorky Park. What he does, we're supposed to write a book together, but I never have any time. What he does is that he helps foreign companies to enter the Russian market. That's his specialism. But he's also a fantastic speaker, and he's really making name now as a keynote speaker and as a trainer and motivational speaker. He talks a lot about leadership, actually, but the Russian way. He's cool. He's fun. He speaks Russian now. He fell in love with the country when he was 19. He says the country. I think I know better. But he's there. He stayed there. He's a lot on Dutch radio and television when he's here. Usually at the business news radio and that sort of thing. He's an expert in the field. Great talker and a nice person to be with. Jeroen Ketting, he talks a little bit about Russia. He once said in an interview, in Russia, assumption is the mother of all fuck-ups. Could you elaborate on that wonderful phrase?
Yes, of course I can. First of all, I said it so rudely because I wanted to drive the point home. Because all the problems that foreign companies face in Russia, it's because they assumed that they knew problem in Russia is that it's a totally different country, different legislation, different business culture, different business environment than what we're used to in Europe or in the West in general. When we go to China, we are ready to accept everything that is strange. Basically, we look at China as we look at Mars. But when we look to Russia, we think like, okay, the Russians, they look the same. If you have had Greek in school, then you can read a bit part of the language. The food is the same, the music is similar. So we think that Russians are the same. And that is where we make the big mistake. If you want to do business in Russia, you need to prepare every single detail. You need to take every single step out of the, let's say, the manual for dummies on doing business in foreign countries.
Yeah, it went very quickly, but he says, it's really important that you maybe they look the same, but they are really not. And I agree, it's very different. What I noticed is that shaken not stirred. The Netherlands, we like to shake hands the first time we meet, and it's not too long. Russians, they greet everybody when they come and when they leave, and this would be similar as you see in France, where also you greet the whole group of people you're with. It's quite normal. Then the eternal bullets, as you can see, Jeroen Ketting is right, because there's very little that we share. I don't agree to the score here of direct, because this is the confrontational score and it's not the directness score. I think the Russian directness score is right there. So this is the sheet that I'm using. I didn't have the time to make my own because there's a lot more I would like to add on it. We will do someday, some year, but first we have to make your book. Yeah, so the relationship score versus the task orientation. The Russian score is on relationship. The Argentine score is on relationship. Koning Pils is on fixing the task. De blonde rakker. That's what we also see. This is, if you're Russian, it's funny because it says в бане, in the sauna, everybody is the same. People in Russia do also have a sauna, not totally Finnish style. It's slightly different. It's very popular. And what's really weird is that they kind of whip you with kind of branches, and it's weird because if you didn't expect that, you think, what's happening? So iemand slaat me met een bos takken. But this is a kind of a gentle. Here is where Russia is as status concerns, and here is where the Netherlands are. And this is a big issue for ladies. This is the difference between all the high heels we saw the police ladies with. And it has to be much more female, and you spend a lot more on clothing and appearances. So if you see them hanging out in Russia, they're all dressed up and super sexy and going to nice places and nice bars and waving handbags and jewelry that they actually can't afford. So it's really about what kind of car do I drive. And some people, actually it was in Brazil, but I was talking to somebody and he said, no, I prefer to live with my father and mother because then I can drive this car. And I'm looking at him, I think, man, you are so nuts. In Amsterdam, I have a bicycle and it's quicker than your car and I can park it anywhere. Of course, it doesn't, it depends on. And in Russia, well, I don't know if I want a car in Russia because the traffic jams are crazy. Then the status. Now, this is how the weekly televised meeting of the Council of Ministers with the politicians. They are always live on TV, and this is how they manage that. This wouldn't happen in Den Haag. Actually, I see pictures of Rutte going on the Sunday Corona meeting on his bicycle usually at the moment. So it is very, very different. Status scores are not the same. This was experienced by Peter the Great. Peter the Great was a famous Tsar who developed St. Petersburg. And he wanted to visit the mayor of Amsterdam. And then there was a maid cleaning the stairs. Said, sorry, you have to wait. I'm cleaning the stairs. He said, but I'm the Tsar of Russia. And the maid replied, you just have to wait. Which would, mean that your head would be cut off in Russia. But in Amsterdam, you get away with that. And sometimes that's also what I feel when I read your emails of some of my CCBS students. Goed, why the Russians don't smile? Why Russian girls are so beautiful? Well, not all of them. Why Russians never smile? What more? Why Russians do not smile? Why Russian women are better? Why Russian women are beautiful, and why Russian women are so beautiful? This is just why Russian. You can try this yourself. And there she is, beautiful, and she's not smiling. Natalia, your number one choice. I mean, earlier for the first name. So how does it work with the smiling? Smiling to the stranger is against the code of conduct. It's 26 muscles that you need to smile. And I've been told that if it's at -15, you don't want to use these muscles because it's way too cold. But I don't think that's the reason. In Russia, to smile at somebody you don't know makes you look stupid, mental. That's what you are in their eyes, because they first think, do I know this person? And then if they realize that they don't know you, they think you're nuts. Think, why would you do that? It's something intimate. So that's a problem that McDonald's had at the beginning when they started to open. They were extremely successful, but they had this forced, you have to smile. And the Russians don't want to smile to a stranger. It's not part of and this also applies to people from Poland, from people from many Slavic cultures. They don't like it. Smiling is something that has to be a sincere emotion. And if you smile and you don't know each other, it's weird. And it's also not ethical in a sense. So you can't do that really. So what can you do about it? I don't know. You're not going to think about it on time. You act so on your first instances. But of course, they do like a smiling person. It's not about that. It's just you don't smile. It is too intimate for a stranger. Time management. What I noticed mostly, they're not super punctual. A few academic minutes are forgiven and are usually always there. But what really bothered me is actually that you make an appointment, and I used to write it in the past in my little diary booklet, and so I really keep my promises, and I appointment is appointment, we say. But in Russia, it's not the same. And you're waiting, but you had to, make a trip of half an hour through a big, what I call Alpha City. So you really, and it's cold, you have to wait for a taxi and it's cold. So then you are there and nobody shows up and you feel stood up and you feel like, wow, the last time that happened to me, I was 13, and you get nastier and nastier. And then you start to call after a while and you're pretty pissed and people are angry at you. Yeah, you didn't call back to confirm the appointment. I said, confirm the appointment? We made an appointment. Do you want me to forward the mails where you said yes? Da. And then, I was not all that friendly because when I get hungry, I'm a monster. So I was in a monster mood. And this happened to me 2 times. And that's when I thought, okay, maybe it's me or maybe it's culture, stupid. And I start to read into the literature and agree that people say, no, it's something that you also have to, in the Netherlands, we say, well, okay, you change, you have to tell me because we already have an appointment. And the Russians say, no, you have to double check. You didn't double check. It's your mistake. I'm like, my mistake? Yes, my mistake. So that's one thing you should know. And then another one, they have 2 New Years and Christmas in January. I think 7th of January is Christmas. So they have the old calendar. And in religion, it's a pope that changes the calendar. And our calendar has been, I don't know, calibrated and changed. But they kept both New Years. Also in Georgia, they do the same. So you have Christmas much later. And it also means the academic calendar is different. The holidays are. And so you have to be a little bit careful when you plan things. Maybe you are free in the beginning of January, but they are not. Een muziekje.
Прощались 6 часов, видали утра лишь. Не знала точно, врете все, но как выбрали. Увяли розы в ноябре, подмерзли саженцы, а мы на пушечном ветре летали, кажется, весь в яблоках и на ветру зажарен перепел. Вы продавали мне мечту, а я поверила.
Now, the interesting thing is that actually sounds quite tender, no, as a language. It's soft. It's a jazz singer. There's a piano. Her name was Wismor, I think, Barbara Wismor. I saw her concert. She's a very gifted singer, I think, and really jazzy. An artist. Yeah. And why do we have this idea about the Russian language? Hollywood, because always you have the mafiosi that with the gun and an aggressive dog that are counting money and said "Здравствуйте." But that's your idea of Russian, but it's not. It's a language of Pushkin, of beautiful literature, of amazing theater and opera and classical music, and there's a very, very rich literature scene still. Actually, that's one of the countries where I still see people on the street reading a book while they're walking. That's the only thing I see is people on social media TikToking away, and in Russia they actually read, and that is, they also like to read. So I noticed that for instance, when you get a press file, a press pack on some kind of, the Russian ones are much thicker than the American ones, which are really thin and only have some keywords, and they look like a PowerPoint, whereas the Russian look like a piece of literature. Also in France, I think there's a little bit more reading culture, writing culture, and also it's a little bit more elaborate. Other cultures, they like it condensed, bite size. But if I may say so, also a little bit more superficial. The Russians don't have that. They are really. Anyway, in the back we can see the Kremlin and the church with all the onions roofs. It's a nice area. This is the modern business part. This is where a lot of good bars and dance clubs are as well. And this is the infamous traffic. It can take you, if you have bad luck, 4 hours and you miss your plane. So what can you do? I would say be smart and go for the subways, the underground. And this is what Spartak Moscow had to do. This is a famous match for the Champions League against Inter Milan. And they almost missed it. They got stuck in the traffic. And if you are not on time, you lose the match. So they got really freaked out, and they had to dress in the subway. They had to put on their clothing. And it's like a movie, like a slapstick movie. But tick, 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 tick. The whole team went into the stadium with their shoes and their clothing on. And then Julio Cruz, I think, was a Feyenoord player, then playing afterwards for Inter Milan. And after 58 seconds in the match, he scored. And then they held the victory of 1-0. And this is obviously because they didn't do a warming up. They went straight out of the subway onto the pitch, and of course you lose. So the Inter Milan scored in the first minute, and then they lost the game anyway. So this is the way they look. Some of the lines, the older lines, they are absolute palaces. Usually they're from the 50s. These really extravagant ones. You always have these pillars, and then this is one side, that's another side, and sometimes I'm running to try to catch it, and people look at me like, why are you running? And then you realize that 10 seconds later is a new train. People from Moscow don't like public transport in the Netherlands because they feel it's too expensive and way too slow. There's one tram every 15 minutes, and they are expecting one every 15 seconds or at the most 1 minute, and then they think, well, it's late. So you just walk and it's there. With the traffic, as you've seen before, it also makes sense. However, just like the traffic, also the underground can look like this. It is crazy. Now, if you drop something on the floor and that thing moves, you can't go back. You're gonna die. And it's it's wel heel erg vol af en toe hoor. And also there is pickpockets, not that many, but you really have to, because there's people all around you. So how will you make sure that you are and of course you look like a tourist. Tea, coffee, vodka. Again, a little bit of haram there. What is the situation? The situation is that a lot of the Russians die because of alcohol-related issues. There is an enormous percentage of the population which is considered, according to the World Health Organization, as a heavy drinker. This is a book, Edwin Trommelen Davai, The Russians and Their Vodka, a thirsty-making book. Here we see old paintings, and as you can see, there's more bottles on the table than people hanging in their chairs. This is Russia. Mana, mana, mana. What do they eat? Pickles, some kind of ugly cheese, some potato salad or red beet salads, fish, and then usually pickled fish. Is it nice? No, not at all. But it's a good foundation for the vodka. Thou shalt not mix. If you ask for a mixed vodka, people stare at you. You have to drink it quickly in small measures, but there's a lot of these small measures. 25% of Russian men die before 55 years old. Can you imagine? A quarter of the population doesn't get over 55. That's weird. That is not okay. Almost 500,000 deaths by alcohol. That includes the traffic accidents caused by the alcohol, but I do see the correlation myself there. And 30%, as I already told you, the Lancet a few years ago only, is considered a heavy drinker. A heavy drinker, not a drinker, but a heavy drinker. This is why people get not that old, especially men. And they usually hang on the couch and they're just drinking too much. A lot of them have an alcohol problem. And I remember if I go to the Hague, to the embassy, and there's some kind of reception, or sometimes they have these really gifted musicians, and then they usually also they're also playing at the embassy, and then they use that to network. And sometimes I like it. I like to feel, I don't know, Russian, and they play their music. We have these people at the embassy, and you're a little bit, in another world. And then the first secretary is greeting me, Alexander, come, let's have a vodka. And it's like 3:30 in the afternoon, and I'm not drinking vodka at the time. It's very little choice also. So, and I respond bad to it. I'm just immediately tipsy, and they do that easily. What are the world's biggest vodka drinkers? The Netherlands is not on the list. And the average, the Poles are very infamous as well, but the Russians, where are the Finns? Well, I think they might drink other stuff then. United Arab Emirates, not bad. Still made it to the top 20. But won't be the royal family. So as a result, we have a Swiss Army knife and a Russian Army knife. This poster you occasionally see, and actually what you don't realize is that Putin is not in favor of the drinking. So in Moscow and certain other municipalities, after 8:30, it's impossible to even buy a beer. But you've been hours on the airport, on a plane, and you finally made it to your apartment and you think, nou wil ik een koud biertje. Impossible. It's not going to happen. And they yell at you if you have it in the supermarket on the counter. So I was like, oh, really? So they don't like it. And I must say, the last times that I visited, I see more people drinking wines, but maybe it's also the kind of posh bars that I like to go to. Corruption. Nobody will agree they do that, but in a lot of budgets, we see that there is the Russia margin. And that is something that I don't see. I see it in the budget for a company working in Russia, and I don't see it in the budget for a company working in Belgium. But how to deal with it? It is. You have to be careful, because now there's also laws in the UK, in America, Canada, that actually punish you if you're taking part in it. So what do people do? The middleman. But will you get around it? No, I don't think so. Everybody in Russia, from a very young age on, is used to corruption. So if you want to have a quicker operation in the hospital, you have a little gift for the doctor. If your daughter is not performing that well at the exams at university, you have a little gift for the professor. And this continues. So there is this kind of bunchy culture where people give in order to get. This is not unique. 60% of the world is doing it. So Russia is not a particular case. But transparency is limited. Now, why? Well, the food from job, but then of course you are badly paid. So a lot of the civil servants would get some kind of extra income out of these little kind of practices. So the government didn't pay enough, and so they needed money elsewhere. That might be one of the reasons. They tend to say that in the 16th century, the private enterprises competition ended and everybody became a civil servant. But half of the Russians that are polled say that it's a main problem, corruption. And it is. There's no other way around it. It is a big problem. The other thing is that it's very bureaucratic and there's a lot of rules and stamps. And in order to get me my lunch money, which I really don't need, but Dimitri, my dear colleague, which I love very much, he is trying to make sure that I have the dinners in the lecturer's restaurant, which is really kind of sweet because it's kind of home cooking, and you eat the typical Russian things there. So I do kind of like that. Not every day, I should be honest. But in order to get it arranged, he has to make a trip over the campus and collect 11 signatures. Can you imagine? For a stupid lunch for me being a few weeks in a thing, and it doesn't cost any money, and I'm happily paying myself. But they don't want that because of the hospitality, which is a big thing also for the Slavics. So the way you deal with that is that you have a trusted person, and that's you sneak it through, and that's the quick way. This starts to look like corruption, doesn't it? So it's the over administrative functions that create this kind of behavior, which we saw also earlier with a lesson on Système D for débrouillard. But this is way more intensive in Russia, I should say. If we look at the language of management, if we talk about leadership, then we actually see the word coercion, which is translated as dwang. So there is a lot of pressure. Now, if you listen to Putin on television, what kind of leadership do you feel? Because the Russians really, a lot of them really support it still. It's also force, it's by force. And then fudging the results, meaning to verhullen de resultaten. So try to cover it up a little bit. So it's a bit of, it's a different style of leadership. It is the prevalent leadership style, though, in Russia. Democratics and egalitarian behavior will not get you anywhere. Negotiating with Russians, man, they think it's a boxing ring. You win or you lose. There is no win-win situation. The food. Do I like it? Yeah, I do. There's a couple of things that I really enjoy. The first, of course, the classic is the borscht, the red beet fermented soup with fresh sour cream. Oh, if it's well made with a good stock. Oh, it's so good. I really enjoy that. So then I told you they even have the onions. They have this looks like artichoke, fish, vodka. Kind of brownish bread, and again the herring, but that's the way. And this is boekweit in Dutch, buckwheat. This is what Italians eat as pasta, and the Asians eat as rice. In Russia, it's buckwheat. Almost on a daily basis, there is buckwheat. It's grayish or brownish. Originally, it's green, but they work with it, and then I really like it actually. It's quite nice. It's savory. There's a Russian shop in the Vijzelstraat. It's called Privet, and there you can buy Russian food. And I was preparing the PowerPoint for this, and I thought, yeah, I would like to eat buckwheat because I don't know. Normally, at the end of November, I'm in Moscow, so I kind of try to recreate the atmosphere at home, but it's very nice. Try Boekwijd. You can't buy it in Albert Heijn. You have to buy it in a Russian shop, and then you boil it for 15 minutes, and you eat it like you would eat rice and or lentils in Turkey, in the Middle East. This I don't like. It's Olivier. It's a huzarensalade. Or sometimes in Germany it's also called Russian salad. But Philips is making a lot of money selling the cube cutter. It's a kitchen machine in which everything you throw in comes out as little cubes. And then ham, onion, potato, carrot, emmer mayonnaise, and that they enjoy. And I think they eat that because I really don't like it. It doesn't. You can make a beautiful huzarensalade, but don't make it that way. It's not very culinary. But they do it as a foundation for the vodka. I think it absorbs all the fat. Then again, we have the Russian Big Mac. And I must say, if you have the opportunity, buy caviar, because it is so. You have this fake lump eieren, which you can buy here in Albert Heijn. That is not good. If you have true caviar from the Beluga or other famous brands, God, it's so delicious. I didn't expect it. I was doing my birthday in Moscow last year, and I thought, now I'm going to celebrate. So I'm only going to have cream champagne and all the types of caviar. So I went to a very fantastic, you would like it, the writer's house, it's called. It's a beautiful place. And you're sitting in these big chairs, and I thought, okay, I'll spend a fortune. It doesn't matter. I want to try. It's my birthday. So I tried all these different kinds of caviar. Man, it's good. It's really nice. And I bought a little can not that little actually, at the airport. And that was so delicious when I opened it back home. So you can have delicious ones. Should you eat it on a bun? Nah, there's better ways, I would say. But it's kind of sweet. This is Baikal. During the communism, of course, anything American was bad. And that's why they made their own kind of drink. And it is the Soviet response to cola, but it's actually kind of herbal. It's not bad. And then you also have kvass. Kvass is made of rye, rogge, and it's slightly alcoholic, but it's like 0.0 something. And actually, this is a Ukrainian flag, but it's the farmers that stand just on the parks. And there you have a little stand where you can buy kvass. It's kind of enjoyable to drink. And I was really like, hey, finally I get to drink it. And yeah, it's a drink made of rogge. Especially when it's really hot, you feel it's interesting and it's real. You know, it's made, fermented. And then they really like a kind of, it's like a Berliner or a kind of oliebol with jam inside. It's called ponchiki, and people really have a sweet spot feeling for that. They really enjoy that, and it gives them a feeling of like, oh, sweet and home. And I don't know what we have it, but we probably here have it with chocolate letters or something like that. Stop. So this is an S, this is a T, an O, and this is a P. Stop. Ah nee joh, laat maar zitten. Is ook gedoe. What people are surprised with here is strange vehicles like bakfietsen and these tiny little cars that the electric cars you see here. They are really surprised that there is no dress code. When you say, oh, we're going to the party, the Russians are really going to dress up. And then they see the Dutchies just in their Hema-spijkerbroek, and they can't believe it. They think, why? But this is a party. Also, when you want to go out and you don't have a jacket and decent, especially for guys, you won't get in. You just won't get in. Maybe because you're a foreigner and they think you spend money, but they have to make an exception for you, which you probably didn't realize. They are a little bit, when they visit Western European countries, they're much more group people, and they feel a little bit left alone. So there's a lack of interest. So when you have them coming over at the company, they expect, night and day, and that you go out of your way to give them a party and fun and all kind of social things. And they're really a bit surprised that they think, yeah, but you didn't do anything for me. And so I hope that Snow, it can be so cold. Prince wrote, nergens knerpt de sneeuw zo fijn als in Rusland. Nowhere the snow crunches as nice as in Russia. But I like knerpt. Dat is echt zo'n woord waar je meteen snapt, ja, inderdaad. Hier hoor ik de sneeuw knerpen. But this is minus 53 degrees. And it's close to Vladivostok, and that is very close to my house in China. And it can be that cold as well. The coldest I had was minus 38. Dat is niet fris, mensen. Anything you can really, it freezes. You have to be careful for your teeth. In Moscow, the first thing I want you to do, also guys, if you have shoes with you, go to the shoe shop and look for the little snow thingy, because they are very, in most shops you have beautiful stuff on a kind of counters where you can click yourself, and on it you need to look for the snowflakes. You need shoes that have these snowflakes, because if you don't and there is snow, you're gonna die. You're just gonna get a pneumonia. And I know what I'm talking about, because in Tallinn, Estonia, I had a pneumonia in the hotel, and it was just because the shoes that we have is leather at the bottom, and all the snow is going through, but it's minus something, you're gonna die. Don't do it. It's not a joke. So get good shoes or get boots. But since you are, in my case, I have to look respectable. I'm going into office, into universities, on television. Yes, хорошо. So for me, I don't have the time to carry a rucksack with shoes in it. So I need some kind of, these shoes have, on the inside, they have fur, some bond gevoerd, real, not plastic. Or you also have them with sheep. That's the shoe you need. And the bottom needs to be plastic, and it needs to be proof against the cold snow. Buy those. They're not expensive. Usually it says made in Germany. So you pay, but it's okay. You're paying for your life. Don't miss it. Girls also buy good shoes for the winter, because you are going to stay there and be buried in Russia. Hier ligt Sarah. Ze had niet geluisterd en ze had geen goede schoenen gekocht. Bon. But then again, there's also other people. This is the New Year's diving. It can be later, but what they do is that it's the walrus swimmers in St. Petersburg, and they dig holes they cut holes with this chainsaw in the river, and then they dive in the water. They do that as a kind of, it's older than Christianity. It's a kind of religious cleansing of your sins or that sort of thing. But minus 34 people, Amir, je notenvriezen er vanaf, jongeman. Het is echt niet te geloven. Min 34 en dan ga je zwemmen. You gotta be kidding. I want to try once, though. I want to have a health check as well before I do it. But I need to do this, I need to have pictures. Here's Papa. Hij rust zacht. Then this is the thingy I told you. They hit you. So if you're not used to it, you think, what is this? That's the sauna and the tribe. And then afterwards they roll in the snow, which is in je Adamskostuum. Dat is ook even wennen. But why not? If you don't clean the roads, this is what will happen. It is a problem. I'm almost finishing. That's why maybe you still see these signs, because the roads are really at times this just mud roads, and this country is so big, 411 times bigger than the Netherlands. How much money can they spend on roads? Be realistic. So a lot of the times it's muddy, and in summer it's all fine, but after in the early spring, you can't drive. So what do you use? Your own private tank. I want to thank you. Очень спасибо. Спасибо большое. Thank you for watching To Russia. I hope that you are able to look at the country in a different way. I really like it. I don't like everything of it, but neither do I like everything of the Netherlands or Greenland. So it is my recommendation to open up a little bit to it. You will like it. There might be some racism, so maybe not everyone will feel the same way. For me, it's easy to say, but yeah, I really enjoy that culture, and I never expected I would like it. So, yeah, it is with. I feel sorry I can't go there now. Actually, I always look forward to be there. They're very hospitable. They have great classic culture. I'm always have a private seat in the beautiful concert halls. There's all the good dining and amazing cars and a lot of fun. So yeah, I really enjoyed Moscow, and I hope to like that for many, many more years. I hope some of you will have the opportunity as well. It's not as expensive as it used to be. In order to actually speak there and work there like me, yes, you need an AIDS test. I think for a tourist, it's not that bad, but give it a try. I will close with a funny clip that one of my Russian students made for me, and I will say bye bye, dooey dooey, the muscle.
От Волги до Енисея, леса, косогоры до степи, Россия, моя ты Россия, от Волги до Енисея.
Yeah.
По дороге ночной горбом заливается, девки ходят гурьбой, а милым улыбаются. Ночь такая замечательная рядом с тобой. Песня русская мечтательная льется рекой. От Волги до Енисея ногами не счесть километры. Россия, моя Россия, от Волги до Енисея, от Волги до Енисея ногами не счесть километры. Россия, моя Россия, от Волги и до Енисея. Гармонист молодой от души старается, а над речною волной здорово играется. Сторона моя родная, Русь бревенчатая, песня звонкая, шальная, с грустью венчаная. От Волги до Енисея ногами не счесть километры. Россия, моя Россия, от Волги до Енисея, от Волги до Енисея ногами не счесть километры. Россия, моя Россия, от Волги и до Енисея. Россия, от Волги до Енисея, леса, косогоры до степи. Россия, моя ты Россия, от Волги